Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the third Ride Across Britain Q&A of this year. Great to have lots of people dialing in again to this one. Before we start, quick bit of admin. As we go through the Q&As, as with the other ones we've had before, please stay on mute, but add any questions you want to the chat function. If you send to the Threshold Sports account, they'll get sent through to us so we can integrate them as we go, or we'll come to those at the end. So the topic for this Q&A is around bikes and kit. And we find within the RAD bubble, there's lots of different perspectives on this. For some people, if you chat to them, you'll get a sense that this is one of the main reasons they actually sign up to the ride in the first place, is an excuse to buy more kit. A good indicator if you're chatting to someone who falls into that category is they'll never refer to it as buying something new, they'll always refer to it as investing in new kit. For others, though, it's a very, very different experience, and the thought of bikes and kit and everything that goes with that, or visiting a local bike shop to pick stuff out, fills them with absolute terror. And it's understandable because there's a lot of jargon or words which you might be unfamiliar with within there, and also some of the kit which people will try and sell you can be eye-wateringly expensive as well. So the aim of this session today is to guide you through some of the basics, explain what you will need to be best prepared for the ride, and hopefully reassure you don't necessarily need to spend a fortune to get the right stuff to get you through. In terms of the team we've got here, as before, we've got Andy, our route director. We've got Lee as well for the first time on one of these Q&As. So he's our chief mechanic on the ride. He's got over 35 years experience, has worked on pro teams, and is also runs one of only two SciTech training organizations in the UK, and they are the industry standard for bike mechanics. So hugely experienced guy to be looking after us come September and also answer your questions today. We've got Karen, who again, as a reminder, takes care of everything on the base camps. So yeah, hopefully lots of useful information to go through today. And first up, I'll hand over to Andy to chat about the bike.
Cheers, Tups. Thank you very much for that intro, and welcome to everyone for this, what is this third webinar that we've delivered so far for RAB this year. I think the key point to reiterate that Nick just made is that, you know, ultimately you are the engine. So we've had people riding bikes from, you know, 10, 12 grand Pinarello dogmas with deep section rims right through to very basic sports bikes. And so I think that's a really important thing to sort of focus on and bear in mind when you're thinking about what bike it is that's going to be suitable. The other thing that's really important is that the route that has been chosen, and we've used the route for many years and tweaked it over the years, because of the numbers that are riding and taking part in this event, we choose the quieter roads for obvious reasons, but those are the roads that are less well maintained. So, you know, taking a very expensive bike that's got, you know, deep section rims and very narrow skinny tires is perhaps not always the best option. And we get people that are riding hybrid bikes that have got a wider range of gears, potentially straight handlebars. We have people that are very, very strong because they have a very strong background in aerobic sport, you know, from perhaps swimming, rowing, who can get by on this event very, very easily with flat pedals, without any clippers, and they amaze us every time they take part, or an adventure type bike. So this slide really is just to sort of demonstrate that you don't need a top-notch road bike. It's not a performance challenge we're taking part in. This is taking part in a bike ride from Land's End to John O'Groats, and as I said at the start of this little spiel, you know, you are the engine ultimately. It is up to you to train and to get yourself prepared, and your bike needs to be the most comfortable it can be for the roads that we're using. And many of them are smaller roads. Equally, many of them are big main roads as well. So you need to be very competent at riding in all conditions, be that wet weather, be that you know, slippery white lines or drain covers, right the way through to lots of traffic on city centre areas. So, you know, the important thing that I'm trying to get across here is that the bike ultimately is the machine that you will be propelling, and you need to be comfortable on that bike. So it needs to be fitting well, it needs to have the right sort of tyres. Lee, who has just been introduced to you, has got a massive amount of experience in terms of mechanics, but you need to get your bike serviced before you ride it. You need to make sure that the bike that you're using is as I say, suitable for the event. The range of gears is good, and we've already had loads of questions regarding the gear selection, etc. So we can answer those questions as we go through the webinar. But for me, get the bike that you're comfortable with, that you feel happiest with, and make sure you're right. There's one of the big questions is mud guards or not mud guards. The first iterations of this event, it was very much sort of based on sort of performance, and lots of people were on race bikes and skinny tires and no mud guards. But as years have gone on, I think people have realized that it's much more about getting from A to B and being comfortable doing so. And if that means that you've got, you know, a set of mud guards on to help your fellow riders or to make sure you're comfortable, then that's fine. So the key message to get across is just be comfortable.
Andy, just a quick one on that last slide. So if you're going into a bike shop and the kind of the language they would use about the different styles of bikes, do I think it's fair to say the majority of people will be on road bikes, or what would historically have been described as road bikes, but kind of within that, people kind of refer to them as endurance bikes or maybe kind of sporty bikes. Is there any words you'd encourage people to almost steer clear of or keep their ears open for if they're talking to someone in their bike shop?
I think it's a great question, Tups. I think the key thing is there's been a massive upsurge in people are just taking part in cycling generally, and so there's a much more upright position with road bikes, and Lee will hopefully back up what I'm saying, but essentially sort of a higher front end to the bike to make it a more comfortable position, less extreme. If you're taking part in bike racing, you'd be much lower at the front to become much more aerodynamic. So I think it's important, as I talked about a minute ago, about making sure you've got a bike fit, and that the front end of the bike is comfortable, and you can sit in the saddle for the length of time that you're going to be sitting in the saddle. And that's the most important aspect of this, is that you can practice being on the road, you know, for what could be 10 hours in a day. The fast guys may well get away with riding a sports sort of setup and a more aggressive sort of position on a bike, but ultimately you need to make sure that you are comfortable sitting on a bike for the length of time you're going to be day after day for 9 days.
Nice one. Thanks, Andy. Should we click on to the next one here? Thanks.
Couple of things here, and I'll hand over to Lee in a minute, but you know, there's a lot of confusion. I mean, cycling speak is you know, the technology's progressed enormously over the years. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when, long before we had clipless pedals, tires were, you know, an inner tube inside a clincher, as it was always called, or a high pressure tire, long before disc brakes. I think, again, just to reiterate what I just said a moment ago, is, you know, a bike is a bike. You know, that's the tool for you as the engine to propel over this distance of 980 odd miles. You can ride with tubes. You can ride tubeless. Tubeless is a new phenomenon, fairly new phenomenon, in that you don't need an inner tube, and so you fill the carcass, as it were, with some sealant. And what happens with the sealant is, if you get a thorn or if you get a nail, it will seal much like a car tire will do. That's absolutely fine when it works, but if it doesn't work, of course, you may well need to then actually end up putting a tube in. It's really important that you know how to change a tube. We've got mechanics on the event, which Lee is going to provide, and they're very, very experienced. We've got a team of chaperones who I manage, who are all equally experienced, but it really helps you particularly, and the event in its entirety, if you are able to change a tube. It's a really great thing if you can practice that sort of thing, you know, whilst the nights have changed. We're now into light nights, but if you can practice that type of thing in your kitchen, and make sure that you're able to change a tube beside the road, saves you calling out the mechanics. Clipless pedals, you know, we've had loads of people ride in this event that have got just flat pedals and training shoes, but clipless pedals with a proper cycling shoe will make a massive difference in terms of the amount of power that you can transmit through the pedal itself. And there's a variety, as is just demonstrated on that slide, of systems. You can have the Look Keo system, there's the Shimano system there's both the mountain bike system, which is slightly advantageous because should you, and I'm hoping none of you will, but should you need to get off and walk, then you can use the SPD pedals, which gives you a little bit of, it's a recessed cleat, which means you can walk in the shoes. Disc brakes, there's a massive drive towards disc brakes in cycling now, but the old-fashioned rim brake is equally sufficient for this type of event. I guess the thing to say as someone who's ridden both types is that, you know, the disc brake is becoming more the norm and is allowing us to use more. It's easy to modulate the braking when you're on a disc brake, perhaps than a rim. But again, it comes down to what you're used to. So those are some of the considerations. I think Lee's got some things to say about that, possibly.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Can we go back to the previous slide just briefly? Thanks. So all I would add to that was very good. I would just make sure that if you are running tubeless, then you will need to bring some kind of tubeless repair system. The only issue with a tubeless system, the problem with it exists on a tubed system as well, and that is that if you have a hole in your tyre that is big enough to stop that system working, you need to put something in it. If you just stick an inner tube in on either system, the inner tube will poke through the tyre and you'll have another puncture very quickly. So there are systems out there. I'm happy to talk about those later on when we talk about kit and equipment. I'm sure we can provide further information on using those perhaps in another session or a video or something if that's required.
One, just to add on the pedals front, and I have to caveat this in saying I'm the least technically qualified of the people on this call. My experience on the pedals front, so I did mountain biking as a kid, so I've always used mountain bike pedals. The one thing which seems potentially stupid to say, but you need to have the same matching pedals and then the cleats attached to the bottom of your shoe. So they're not always, you know, they do vary. So if you're going and asking for more cleats, you need to make sure you've got the right ones. The second one is around the benefits of SPDs is if you see people in cafes walking on their heels and slip sliding around, if you've got a penchant for stopping in pubs and cafes, which may have slippery floors, you can walk a little bit more normally and more securely in the SPD pedals. So again, we often talk about playing to your strengths and personality traits. If you can see yourself ducking into cafes, then you will walk a bit more normally in the SPD pedals. Sorry, on to more technical things from you, Lee.
Thanks. Yeah, that's really good advice actually, and I would reiterate that. And definitely comfortable shoes. If that's a consideration, then it's a very good one. Okay, so we will obviously be providing mechanical support throughout the event, and we will have mechanical coverage at the start of each stage and on the event at the pit stops, and also mobile out on the course. However, the best thing you can do is to make sure your bicycle is in good condition before you start. We are there to get you to the end of each day and obviously to the end of the event, but we're not miracle workers. We are really good, but there is a large number of participants and a relatively small amount of time each day. So if your bike is requiring a full strip down and rebuild, it's just not going to be possible. So you do need to make sure that your bike's in good conditions before you start. And I would suggest and offer support to all the local bike shops out there. They will be very happy to support you and give you, I'm sure, really good advice. If you're not sure where to go, reach out to your local cycling club and ask for their suggestions as to where to go. The sort of things that you need to be checking in advance are the conditions of your tyres. Make sure that they're in good condition before you start, and that is the best defense against punctures, keeping your tyres at the right pressure and making sure that your tyres have enough tread on them. And that's the best thing that you can do. You also need to make sure that your brakes are in good condition. So getting someone to check if you're not mechanically minded to do that yourself. Just make sure that your brake pads are in good condition and have enough life on them to last the event. Again, that will save you having a problem on the event. And the other one, which is fairly obvious, is if you check your wheels and your bottom bracket. So they're all the bits that spin. If they spin nice and freely, your ride will be much less effort than if you're trying to push a poorly working wheel or bottom bracket along. So I would urge you to get that checked, and to obviously make sure that you arrive at the event with a perfectly working bicycle. And then from there, if that's the case, we can definitely keep you on the go. You will need a few specifics, a few specific things, and I think we'll talk about that in the next slide. On the event, there is no charge for labour. However, we do charge for spares that we carry. You will need to bring some form of payment to buy those. And if you have a really big problem, then we have loan bikes available, which we'll give you to keep you moving. Okay, so there's some things that you definitely should be thinking to bring. The derailleur hanger, or the mech hanger as it is there. Again, if you're not familiar with these, they are the bit that joins your gears, the rear derailleur, to the frame, and they are quite unique to your bicycle. There are very few that are identical. We will bring some, but the chances are we'll have very few of them if we took a spattering across the range of bikes that we're going to see. So again, go to where you bought your bike or your local bike shop and get one of those. Obviously, you're going to need an inner tube. I'd recommend you bring 2 or 3 for the whole event. A puncture kit's great, but that's not necessarily something you want to be doing by the side of the road, particularly if it's poor weather. If you're running tubeless, you will need a tubeless repair system, such as the one on the picture. That's the bit that looks like a sewing kit, I guess, down at the bottom to the right of the inner tube. Again, if you're not familiar with that, local bike shop definitely be able to help you. They are readily available nowadays. And then the last thing is a couple of spokes for your wheel. If you brought 4 or 5, that would be ample. Spokes come in different lengths. They have different heads and different nipples for specific wheels. Again, we will help, but we are going to be fairly remote some of the time. If you've got some spokes with you, that could mean the difference between you completing on your own bike and potentially not completing at all. So a mech hanger, puncture repair kit, tubeless repair kit, inner tubes, spokes. These are the things that you definitely need to bring with you.
Lee, just got a couple of questions coming in, which are probably worth addressing. So, I mean, one quick one before we do, I think the point around costs of this, we said at the beginning, you alluded to the fact that these can potentially end your ride if you can't get a replacement mech hanger. Buying these, but then sending them back if you don't use them is very kind of reasonable to do. You can keep them fully packed up and stuff like that. So people are worried about some of the costs of these. Better to buy it, keep the receipt, send it back if it's unused, and not take it out of your bag for 9 days rather than risk it.
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple of questions on tyres. So one person asking around, are 28mm tyres considered too narrow for those rougher sections? Would you recommend something wider? Might be an Andy or Lee question for that one.
I'm happy to take that. I think 28 would be absolutely perfect. I've ridden it every year since it began, and I think a 28mm tyre is absolutely spot on. Equally, you can get away with a 25mm tyre if that's what you're running, but a 28 would be, in my mind, ultimate.
Is there a trade-off for people who might be running, because it seems since we've been working on the event, tyres have generally got wider. Is there a trade-off of going to a 32mm tyre or something like that?
I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with it. It's 32mm tyre. If it was me personally, I would run a 28. But if you've got a 32 on, it's not going to make any difference really.
Okay, great. Worth checking as well. They fit your frame as well. If you've got an older frame, sometimes they're not so comfortable with those wider tyres. So again, one, if you're going to a bike shop, you can always get them to check. Another one here is probably for Andy. One person saying they've got a choice between a road bike and a gravel bike, and they're edging towards the gravel bike. Any thoughts on kind of the relative merits of that?
I'm so old. I can remember when we used to ride one bike for everything. And I say that with my tongue in my cheek. I mean, a bike's a bike. I said at the start of this, if you feel more comfortable on your gravel bike, then by all means ride your gravel bike. If that means that you've got a lower set of gears, you've got a wider set of tires, then that's likely to be a slightly better option, in my opinion. But you need to be comfortable with what you're riding. So I wouldn't like to say one over the other. It depends what you're happy with. I will ride my road bike over gravel, for example. So you need to know what you're comfortable with.
Yeah. And one, this might be more for you, Lee, you were talking about tire pressures and things like that. What do you recommend in terms of tire pressure for a road bike? I imagine it may be linked to the tires, but any guidance on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely linked to the tyres, and on the side of your tyre will be printed the minimum and maximum pressures. As you said, tyres have got a bit wider generally, and that has meant a lowering in pressure, again, generally. In terms of puncture resistance, putting your tyres to the higher end of their maximum range will resist punctures better. Generally speaking, lower pressures are for potentially comfort and in situations where you want a bit more grip. But on a road bike, on the roads that we're going on, then I would suggest that you put your tire pressures up fairly near their maximum. If you've got a ridiculously high tire pressure on an older tire, then it might be worth considering getting some slightly more modern tires. Again, bike shop for advice.
Thanks, Lee. Very helpful. We've got one here from Ingmar. Do you need to carry the spokes and mech hanger while riding, or can they go on transport track? And if needed, is it possible to get brought to you on the road? So I can probably take that one. So we won't be able to get things from your luggage and brought to you on the road. So we've got loan bikes. So if something like a mech hanger goes, I imagine that might be a scenario where we give someone a loan bike to get through. And also, Lee, with spokes, if we lose one spoke on a wheel, it's likely that we can kind of get through the rest of the day. What are your thoughts on that one?
The mech hanger, I would definitely put into your little, saddle pack.
Okay.
And to be honest, I'd recommend always riding with that, regardless of it being this event or just out for a 40, 50 mile ride. It's a no-brainer. It's a small piece of kit, weighs nothing. The spokes, well, personally, I take them to the stay of my bicycle, the bit of the metal part of the frame or the carbon part of the frame. But yes, we'll probably get you to the end, barring anything catastrophic. So yes, spokes can be brought later.
Yeah.
But the mech hanger on the bike.
But equally, okay, yeah, considering the weight difference, easier to have it with you.
It's nothing.
Okay. Great. We've got one more here. If you're using an electronic shifter, it's the way you can charge the shifter. That'd be one for Basecamp. So, Karen, I'll pass that one on to you.
Yes, you can. We have an area by the bike racking that you'll be able to charge bits on your bike that can't come off, or anything that needs charging that can be taken off your bike. You can then bring that into the main charging area, into the it's normally in the dining tent, the other end of the dining tent, but you can't bring your whole bike into the dining tent. So anything that can't come off needs to stay by the bike racking charge area, anything that can into the main tent.
Great, thanks.
Can I jump in there, Nick?
Yeah, yeah.
So just to put people's minds at rest, a Di2 battery will last between 2,000 and 5,000 kilometers on a full charge. If you make sure it's charged up, you're unlikely to need to do it again.
Great. Thanks, Lee. Heb, shall we skip on to the next one? Andy, I think this one is your wardrobe here.
Yeah, so I think one of the key things to say about this slide is that it's better to be overdressed than it is to be underdressed. You know, we are in Great Britain in September. We've ridden this event where we've got up in Scotland and it was -2 degrees. So, you know, I think I would always, when I started cycling many years ago, I was always told that you always wore a base layer, whatever the temperature. And the main reason for that is that two items of material, if you should, and you won't because you're all going to be very competent by this time, if you should slide off your bike for whatever reason, then the two pieces of material offer a bit of protection because they rub against each other rather than against your skin. That's the first thing. So that's a top tip. But the second thing is that however hot you might feel, the base layer will wick the perspiration away from your skin, which also is a much more pleasant way to be. I think it's important, I will always have a cape, a rain jacket in my back pocket, and primarily because if you should have to stop when you're in an exposed area, be that at the top of Shapfell or somewhere in the Cairngorms, and you're trying to mend a puncture and the weather closes in, you do need to be able to stay warm. So always have that in your back pocket. It takes no space at all. Jerseys have got 3 pockets in the back. I will often have my arm warmers and maybe even a gilet. You can just unzip a gilet if necessary. Shorts are important, of course. 3 pairs of shorts, so you've got a clean pair on every day. So it's vitally important that you've got, a clean chamois next to your skin. The last thing you want is to get any sort of saddle sore or anything sort of in that the nether regions, which will end up potentially ending your ride. So it's really, really important you got clean shorts every day, which is why we always recommend 3 pairs of shorts, and you can get the washing. I think there's a laundry section coming up in a bit. Obviously your helmet, other things like a couple of water bottles. Some people will have sports nutrition in one water bottle and just ordinary water in another. We talk about the saddle pack, making sure that you've got a couple of tubes. If you're running tubeless, then making sure that you've got the wherewithal to fix a slit in the tire if necessary. I would always argue, having recently converted to tubeless, that you've got a spare tube just in case the split is so large that the sealant doesn't seal. And one of the things that people often oversee is a working pump. They have a pump on their bike, but they haven't used it for goodness knows how many years, and it's full of water and rusty and doesn't actually work. So these are the sort of things that you just need to make sure. We've talked about spokes. I would always have a set of spokes taped somewhere on my bike just in case for the wheels we've got. Lights, we do start early in the mornings. Sometimes we are in September. We've got the nights drawing in. We've also got dark mornings. So I think it's quite a good thing to have lights on your bike. You don't have to use them if it's bright, but it's always good if you've got them there. Obviously a helmet. If you decide you want to have glasses, then make sure you've got glasses. Gloves are always good. Should you fall off, you can get your hand out to avoid scarring your hands, and that's another important thing to consider. Cycling shoes are an obvious thing to say on that slide, but I think it's important that layering and making sure that you can take stuff off as opposed to starting off with the least amount of clothing on and then becoming cold. You can pedal hard and get warm and take stuff off and put it in your back pockets if necessary. So that would be my sort of top tips on clothing and things that you need on your bike.
I think there's some ones as well with getting used to the kit you're riding with. Sometimes we see people snipping the tags off things which then chafe and rub and they're not used to. So getting used to the stuff you're riding with is an important one as well. So, yeah,
I think you've made a great point there, Tups. I think it's like getting your bike serviced and making sure it's serviced in good time, and that any new equipment or new things that you might try, absolutely make sure that you've tried them for a decent amount of time before you come and take part in this challenge. Because as you've rightly pointed out, if you're suddenly wearing a different brand of shorts with a different chamois, and that's the last thing that you want is to encourage some sort of chafing or rubbing in the wrong part of your anatomy. That say no more. Moving on to top tips, I think it's we've kind of alluded to this part already. It's not a speed challenge. This there will inevitably be people at the front end of the event who are keen to finish as early as possible, but the important thing is that you're comfortable and that you can get through this challenge in a way that you enjoy it and make the most of it and look around and see the scenery. So in that term, you need to make sure that you've got a bike fit and that the bike fits adequately. I would always say that going and having a proper bike fit is a vitally important part of preparation for this event. It's very, very important that the 3 points of contact, your backside, your hands and your feet are well set up, so that the saddle position, I mean, when I was taught, it was very straightforward. You put your heel on the pedal, and when it was at 6 o'clock, the knee needed to be very, very slightly bent in that position. What you would then do is you would then put the pedal with your foot on the pedal in the right position at 9 o'clock. And if you were to drop a plumb line from the end of your femur, that should then drop over the center of the pedal spindle and also the ball of your foot. And then if you put your elbow on the peak of the saddle and reach forward to the handlebars, your index finger should be 1 inch, 2 inches behind the center of the bars. That's a very, very rough way of working out the right sort of position on your bike. Nowadays, there's far, far more intricate ways of working out the position on a bike, and it is money well spent, I would argue. But if you want just very, very basic advice, what I've just described is important. Mud guards, it's a real bone of contention. Some people still think they're in taking part in a bike race. For me, comfort is absolutely important. And if it means that I'm not sat in a soggy chamois because I'm not getting sprayed in the backside by all the road grime, mud guards are quite important. Equally, if you're riding in a group and you're in front of riders, if you've got mud guards on, you're going to provide them with a little bit more comfort as well, because you've not got water spraying off your back wheel in their face. So quite an important point. We've already touched upon wider tyres. We're making it sound like we're taking part in a gravel ride across rough tracks. That's not the case at all, but there are some little lanes that we use which are far, far less well surfaced than some of the big major roads. So I think the point to make here is that, we use all sorts of types of tarmac Adams roads, and some are less well maintained. Let's leave it at that. And then a simple frame bag, and I think by that we're talking lots of people use a top tube bag to put their snacks in, which then frees up the bag they can put under their saddle to perhaps put extra waterproofs or things in. And nowadays, of course, there's far, far more choice in terms of bags that can fit on bikes, in terms of putting extra stuff that you might decide you want to take with you. I would always go away. This picture is quite interesting because the young lady's got a backpack on. I would always refrain from using a backpack just from balance issues. So if you can put stuff on your bike, far better to put it on your bike than it is to have it on your body. But that's just a personal view that I've been grown up with. So I think it's really important that you make sure that you're comfortable. It's a challenge that you need to be able to sit in your bike all day long, get the position right, practice being in that position. The training plans are written such that you are able to gain confidence from sitting in the saddle for that length of time, more than the actual ability to ride a certain amount of distance. But that's the key thing, so that you feel comfortable in your own mind that you can do that.
Thanks, Andy. We've got a couple of questions coming in as well, a couple of quick ones. Tom and Sarah just asking about water bottles. You will get a couple of water bottles at the beginning of the ride to hold on to, so those will get labelled up. We've got stuff for you to label those. And I think we've got bottle sterilising facilities midway as well. So yeah, those will be included. Another question from Holly: if you want to carry out maintenance or make adjustments to our own bikes in the evening, is there space where we can do this? Will there be tools available in base camps, or bring your own? So I think on this one, for on the road maintenance, often you get multi-tools and things like that to make a few tweaks. If you're confident doing a few things like that, but then also in the base camp in the evenings, Lee, your team will have a full set of tools. And I imagine if things are busy, you wouldn't mind lending them out to people to make a few tweaks of their own if they're confident. Oh, on mute, Lee.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm sure we can sort out a generic toolbox that people can help themselves to. Most of the mechanics are very precious about their tools. It's their living. I'll be brutally honest, I probably won't lend mine out, but I will bring some tools that we're happy to share. That's a great point. Yeah. Okay,
nice one. Thanks very much. Right, shall we move on to the next bit, which I think is Kit off the bike?
Yeah, that's me. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the bits and pieces you need when you are not actually cycling. So as you can see from this slide, the big picture in the corner is a tent. That's not something you actually have to bring. We provide those for you. You'll get the identical model to the one shown in the picture, but you don't have to do anything other than go to it each night. We put it up and take it down for you. You do, however, need to bring the rest of the equipment for camping and a good night's sleep, which is your camping mat and your sleeping bag. So we get a lot of questions on what sort of mat is suitable. And really, it's entirely up to you. There are many that fit the bill. Some people prefer more of an airbed. Some people prefer just like a quite a straightforward, thinner camping mat. So the best thing is to get something that suits you. But the main criteria for us is that it must go into your bag each morning when you put it on the luggage truck. So if you are bringing something like an inflatable mat, you do need to deflate it, get it in your bag and inflate it each day. So that's just worth considering. On the sleeping bag front, again, many makes and models. Please just make sure you get something that does go down to minus temperatures. As Andy said earlier, we have had temperatures in Scotland down to -2, -3. It can be a bit chilly, a bit frosty in the mornings. And it's always better to have a bag that can keep you warm in those sorts of conditions. If it is warmer, you can always just leave it unzipped or not or just sleep under it. So as Andy was saying, on the kit on the bike, better to be warm and then take stuff off. Same for the night, be warm first and you can always wriggle out of it if you don't need it. In terms of other bits and pieces for a good night's sleep, it's great if you're a light sleeper. I strongly advise that you bring earplugs. The tents are pretty close together and much as they're cozy, they are not soundproof. So people will be nearby. We will have a few snorers in the group, I'm afraid. So a pair of earplugs really does cut out some of that noise. So bring your earplugs. If you like it to be completely black, bring your eye mask, whatever it is that helps you sleep through the night. Excuse me. The other top tip really is to think about a pillow. I personally have to have a pillow to have a good night's sleep. You can get little travel pillows, which are always good. Or the other thing you can do is just bring a pillowcase and then just shove your warm coat into it at the end of the evening before you go to bed, and that automatically then forms a pillow. So if you haven't got much space in your bag, just bring your pillowcase and make your pillow out of your clothes if that's what you need. Strongly recommend a beanie. Again, it gets really chilly at night and you do lose something like about 10%, I think it is, of heat out of your head. So if it is cold, a beanie makes all the difference. So bring a beanie, again for the mornings as well. It can be a bit sharp sometimes, especially up in Scotland. So that will really help. Now on the clothing front, you, apart from underwear or pajamas or something to sleep in, the only other clothes you really need are a couple of t-shirts, base layers and a warm fleece or hoodie and some tracksuit bottoms and your warm jacket. You really can wear the same things every night. It's not a fashion show, and to be quite honest, absolutely no one is going to notice if you've been wearing the same set of clothing for those 9 nights. So please don't overpack. The worst thing you can do is have way too much stuff and have to lug it to and from your tent each day. Other essentials you can see from the picture, things like your wash kit, first aid kit, sunscreen, it might be sunny, mozzie repellent, we might have a few midges up in Scotland. There's one pit stop in particular on the last day, a place called Altnahara, always has mozzies almost regardless of the weather. So your mozzie repellent will come in useful, I think, on that day 9, even if you don't need it for the rest of the days. You can even bring a mozzie net if you want to. We have had in a few years some mozzies around the sort of latter stages of Scotland. It really depends on the weather and the temperature. We're a little bit later in September this year, so it might be fine, but if you've got one, bring it. It's always worth having it in your pocket. You will need a little bit of cash or a credit card to pay for goods along the way. We have things like bars in the evening, we have coffee concessions, and Lee, of course, will need you to make payment if you do need any mechanical spares, so have that with you. Head torch, absolutely essential for finding your way around your tent when you're in it at night and just moving around the campsite. We try, where possible, to turn off as many generators as possible at night. So if you do need to get up to go to the loo, it's always useful just to have it so you're not tripping over anything. Shoe plates and covers, Andy might have to tell you a bit more about whether you're going to need those and where and when. He'll come on to that in a minute. And then just little things to make life easier, like spare batteries, your charging cables, don't forget those, for all your electronic devices, and those little things that are just going to make life more straightforward for you. Is that everything on the picture? I think it is. Okay.
Yeah, you've pretty much got everything there, Kazo.
Great. Okay, let's go to the next slide then, please, Heb. I think the key thing, as I just said, is, again, pack for function over fashion and don't overpack. A waterproof bag, I would say, is the essential bit of kit that you need for around the campsite. Even if we have 9 days of fantastic sunshine, the mornings can be dewy, the evenings can be a little bit damp. You know, you will be putting your bag down to get in and out of your tent. If you've got a waterproof bag, it just makes life a lot more straightforward for you. When you're in there, everything is coming out completely dry. If for any reason you can't get a waterproof bag, or it's just a little bit of expense you don't want to go to, make sure you waterproof your kit inside your existing bag. So wrap everything in bin liners or other bags, and again, just keeps it all dry. There's a strange phenomenon with RAB that literally all your kit goes in nicely at the beginning, but by about day 3, it's expanded to about treble the size. So really bring a bag that's got space in it from the beginning. Don't feel you've got to fill it, because you really do only need those few t-shirts and a pair of joggers, but have some space in it. So of a morning, you're not really wrestling with your kit to get it back into your bag, and that gets you off to a good start and gets you out in a good mood. Black seems to be the favoured colour for waterproof bags, which is great until there's 1,000 others of them. So if you are buying a new one and you've got a choice, pick a brightly coloured bag that sticks out. It's a lot easier for you when you're looking for it. And if you do have a black bag, just put something on the bag that makes it easily identifiable for you. So a bright coloured label or a strap or something like that, so that you pick up the right bag and someone equally doesn't pick up your bag. Waterproof shoes or little short wellies, I think, are an absolute must. All the crew have them. And again, even if we have lovely sunshine, the mornings are a little bit damp, and the evenings can be as well. And if it does rain a lot, the footfall areas can get a bit muddy because we are in fields. So if you've got things like a little pair of wellies where you can just keep your feet clean and dry, it will just make the experience all the more better for you. Make sure you then bring your carrier bag though to put your little muddy wellies in, because you don't want them messing up your one pair of joggers that you're bringing. The bum bag for around the camp, again, not a great fashion item, but really essential. You want to try and minimize your walking time to and from your tent. There's 1,000 tents on the site, and that takes up quite a bit of space. So you don't want to be going back to your tent unless you really need to. So your bum bag is great. You can carry a toothbrush in it, so you can clean your teeth as you leave the dining tent. Before you go back to your tent, you're not backwards and forwards. You know, you carry your phone, your chargers, all those things you need, carry with you. Just try and sort of think about that when you're leaving your tent, so you've got everything and you're minimizing that time and distance. Nice little image on the picture on slide shows you lots of smaller bags. Again, if you can put your kit section it out into items within your bag, it just eases the process of finding things, and creates a little bit of order that you're not having to fight with that first thing in the morning or last thing at night. And finally, I've talked about it before, but it can get really cold. So just please come prepared for that, and pack those bits of kit that are going to help you have a good night's sleep, because that is key to then having a great day the next day. I think that's it.
That's great. Thanks, Kaz. I've got a couple of questions on the last slide coming through as well. So about size of the bag. So it's done on weight, which is how we have to calculate all the luggage we carry. So I think it's a 16 kilo kind of baseline weight limit. And from our experience, even for larger people where the kit weighs a bit more, it is eminently doable to get that in at 16 kilos if you don't overpack. However, if you want to bring more stuff, or you want to bring a heavier mattress or something like that, you've got the option of buying an extra 5 kilos on top of that as well. So yeah, 16 kilos is what's included, but if you want to bring more stuff, then we can do that as well. In terms of, someone was asking about the size of the bag. I think most people would have something between kind of 90 and 120 litres, again, depending on how you're packing and how much spare space. But the main thing from our side is around weight for transport rather than volume. So if it's still kind of relatively easy to carry around, we'd probably err on the side of being one size up rather than one size down to make it easier to pack. And I think it is, you know, it's right across Britain, and Karen's top tips here, you might spot a theme in terms of waterproofing. We've had years where it's been fantastic weather and we've hardly had a drop of rain from Land's End all the way up to John O'Groats. We've had other years where we've been rained on, you know, at some point every single day, and having the right waterproof kit makes a big difference. So waterproof bag, absolutely fundamental, and walking around camp, keeping your toes dry, makes a big difference. And again, if we're blessed with clear skies up in Scotland, that's often when it's chilly in the morning. It gets down to those cold temperatures. So it's a proper adventure. You know, we're out in the elements for 9 days, going up across high ground up in Scotland and covering a lot of mileage. So expect all manner of weathers and pack and bring the kit list, which we give to you, because it is all stuff which is likely to get used. I think the next one is the most glamorous one, which I'm doing today for laundry. So we have looked to try and get laundry on the ride, because we understand that buying 9 sets of kit is a really significant expense. It's not easy to get mobile laundry services to come in on site. But we've managed to get something in for day 2, day 4 and day 6. So 3 laundry services up the country. And the way this works is you'll be given a numbered net bag if you've booked into the laundry, and that has a kind of string within it, or a cord within it, which you string your 6 items of cycling kit onto. That then gets washed, and then afterwards that cycling kit gets hung on that cord to dry as part of the laundry process. So what that means is there's a limited space on that, and so that's why we have the 6 item limit, because we know, especially with cycling kit, that should dry on there without any issues. In the past, we've had people try and squeeze in about 15 different items, which we only realise when we try and hang that on the line. And anyone who does their domestic laundry, as I do, will realise that if you compress all that stuff in a small space, it's not going to dry. It's not going to dry properly. So that's why we have a limit of 6 items, and it is intended for cycling kit as well, rather than heavy stuff, which can take a lot longer to dry. So you don't expect pairs of jeans and stuff like that in there. But ultimately, you know, you're wearing your non-cycling kit for a relatively short amount of time each day. So it's your cycling kit, which is important to keep clean and fresh, especially the bits going next to your skin, avoid any kind of medical issues. And that's what the laundry is intended for. So in order to book it, you book it through either registration or via your My Events portal, and that will go out on the comms as well with links to that. There are washing facilities, hand washing facilities on the site as well, and a drying room, but it's important to kind of stress that the drying room is intended for people to dry waterproof jackets and things like that. It's not intended for 1,000 people to hand wash their full bag every night and hang it up. So if you're planning on doing repeated sets of washing your cycling kit, we'd recommend the laundry as the best option to make sure it comes back clean and fresh the next day. I think that covers off the laundry. We've got one more question coming in from Will. So toilet and shower facilities at base camp every day, very much so. Every day, toilets at the base camps and at the pit stops as well, and hot showers in the evening at all the base camps as well. So yeah, you can get clean and dry pretty quickly when you arrive. So I think that is it for the main items on bike and kit. So should we hand over to see if any other questions are coming in from people, either on the chat or people want to send in for us to answer now? And if not, we can go through a few things I've written down just as we go, which might be worth clarifying. So one is on the purchasing of items. So this is more kind of related to the spares and equipment for mechanical stuff. We've had situations in the past where people have wanted to get new kind of cassettes, chain sets. Some of the stuff can be quite expensive. and they find the cheapest price in the whole of the UK and ask us to do it at that discounted price where they can find it somewhere else. Unfortunately, we can't do price comparisons on the road, so it'll just be at standard RRP for the actual item, but then the labour is included on that as well. So yeah, it's really not one to try and bring a knackered old bike and get it fixed for free on the ride, very much get it serviced and checked beforehand, because we can't do any discounted rates on that. We have from Ingmar, in the photo I see people sitting on chairs. Are they supplied? So yeah, at the base camps we've got chill out areas and space for you to relax. So that is a mix of all the dining tables where people eat, but also if the weather's good, we'll bring loaded comfy chairs and bean bags and things outside as well, so people can relax outside. We've got another one from Gemma. What are facilities in the base camp? Will there be kettles? Facilities in base camp, I mean, Karen, is a fairly lengthy list on that. Do you want to just run through the headlines of what people can expect and tick off the kettle question?
Sure. You don't need a kettle because in base camp there are urns with always hot water, so you can always make tea and coffee. We have, in general, on the base camp, we have a catering area, a chill out area. We have the drying room that Tups has mentioned. We have a medical area. We'll have a stretching area as well with guided stretching and yoga sessions. You've got your camping, mechanics, bike racking, but you really, you don't want to bring a kettle and you really don't want to plug it in because you might mess up the whole system. So plenty of hot water though, always available there, and for tea and coffee, which is free. The coffee concession I was talking about is sort of the posh coffee concession. If you fancy a macchiato extra hot, whatever it is your thing to get you through the day, you'll be able to purchase that from the coffee concession, but there's always tea and coffee available in the catering area as well. And someone just popped up on my question stuff about towels. You do get a clean towel every day, so you don't need to bring a towel. You only get one though, so if you are a 2-towel person, please bring a little spare, but you do get a clean, fresh towel every day.
Great, thanks Karen, this is good. We're getting lots of questions coming in, so do keep them coming and we'll work through them. So on the laundry, just confirming whether we drop off at the end of day 2, end of day 4 and end of day 6 to collect the next day, or is it drop off at the end of day 3, 5? I mean, Catherine, I'm out of my depth in the laundry now. I thought I was doing so well.
Okay, if it's a laundry night, so to make it simple, rather than thinking about days, if we say bath is at laundry is at bath, you bring your kit to the laundry when you arrive at the bath base camp. We wash it overnight and you pick it up the following morning whilst you're still at the bath base camp and go off with it. So you're dropping it off and picking it up from the same site that you're actually on. We're not transporting your laundry for you to the next site. Does that cover it?
Great. And another question here, is it 6 items per wash day or 2 by 3 wash days? It's 6 items per wash day. So the idea is you can get your kind of core base layers, all those contact points nice and clean. There's one here around, if using tubeless, is there fluid available? Do we need to bring? Lee, I have to confess I'm not sure on that one, so I imagine it's bring your own.
Sure. It makes sense to, we will have fluid on our vans, but it's quite sensible if you're running tubeless, you can get a little 60 milliliter top up, and that's very useful out on the road. I personally keep one in my saddle pack. We will have that on the van.
Another one from Paul here around CO2 gas. So this is people using carbon dioxide canisters as opposed to pumps. Any thoughts on that? Kind of bring your own, how many you might need, is it essential?
I think it's a great idea. If it's wet and cold, if you're very tired, that's fantastic. Again, I have a couple of those in my bike bag. We'll have those available to top up, so just a couple, but you do need a pump as well, just in case.
Great. We've got one from Graham here, talking about bike security at base camp. As he put it, there will be a lot of attractive kit around. I think that's a good summary if you're perusing the bike area. You don't need to bring locks. So the way it's run is that is all sectioned off with security, and they will be there checking when you drop it off, and no one can take a bike out unless the bike number matches their wristband number. So you don't need to carry locks with you at any point. It's not necessary in the base camp. And if you're stopping off, if you want to stop off at the route, on the route, it tends to be that there'll be a group of people and someone sat outside having a coffee or keeping an eye on things. So that's the only time if you wanted to bring a lock, but the vast majority of people don't bring one on the event. Question about filling a hot water bottle. It would be possible to fill a hot water bottle. And I think a great example of working out what it is that helps you sleep. You know, it's things which might be a luxury for one person. If they get a great night's sleep, absolutely the right thing to do to think like that. One here from Callum: are there sufficient covered areas for bad weather? Should we expect to be sitting out in the rain? No, there is sufficient covered areas. So the main marquee where we'll all gather in the evenings for eating, with some of the chill out area in there as well. There's enough covered area for everybody within that. So you shouldn't be sat out in the rain, although obviously moving between tents, showers, toilets and things like that. If it's tipping with rain outside, you want your waterproof with you. One here around when lights are being charged, how do they not get lost with 1,000 other lights? So Karen, this is probably one just to explain the charging system.
Sure. So the charging system is along the region of about 700 to 800 plug sockets or USB charging sockets. So it's all laid out on several tables. And what we strongly suggest that you literally label everything and have things like screensavers on your phones that are specific to you, not the generic screensaver, and label everything, even cables, anything that you're going to plug in to those sockets. And then we ask sort of for like an honesty system, really, that if you're early into camp, you're one of those riders coming in earlier and you need to charge your goods, then charge them up early and then take them off before the later riders are coming in. So there's sort of a constant flow of things through the charging table, and that applies to things like the drying room as well. You know, get your kit in there early and then move it if to make space for other people. So it will be safe if you have labeled it properly. And if it does then get lost and it's got a label on it, or someone does pick it up, it's very easy for us to reunite it with you, and you can put your rider number on it or your name or whatever.
It is reassuring. I mean, touch wood, we've had very little issues with people with stuff going missing on the rides. Something we were talking about in the office the other day is the benefits of, you get lots of battery packs now, some quite compact ones which can charge up 3 or 4 items. So again, if you want to, rather than bring everything into the charging area, you can always bring your labeled power pack and then charge stuff up in your tent if you want, as well as another option. Got a question from Claire about decaf tea bags. Are decaf options available?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Chris very kindly saying, hoping you're using the same Sharpie as last year. They're brilliant. So fingers crossed you are. I believe we are, so I hope we are.
We are, yes.
That's a relief. You can rest easy, Chris. One here as well. What are the feeding times for evening meals and base camps? Does make it sound a bit like a zoo.
Okay.
So the feeding times for evening meals.
Shall I answer that, Tubbs?
Yeah.
On the whole, dinner normally is served from about 5:30. So up to that point, there's afternoon tea, which is soup and roll or something like that. Dinner starts at 5:30 and goes through till 9. So again, if you're in early, please eat early and leave space for later on. And if there's a queue, don't get in it really. Let the queue go down and join it a bit later. So if everyone goes at once, the system breaks down. So just stagger it, and there's always plenty of food. It will definitely not run out. So don't worry about that. I've got a couple as well, Tubbs, that have come through. Someone was asking if after the final day you sleep in the tent. That's a no. So when you get to John O'Groats, when you finish that final leg, you then go home. There's no campsite up at John O'Groats. And a message from Paul saying, is it the same tent every night or on a first come first served? The way the tent allocation works now is that when you come into the camp each night, you go to the tent allocation desk and they will tell you what number tent you're in that night. So your tent number will vary each day, and you'll get a wristband to tell you what your tent number is on that particular day. So you go to tent allocation and they will tell you the number, and then you go to to that tent. So you're not in the same tent every day or even the same tent number every day. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Karen. We've got a few more here. I'm really getting peppered on my laundry knowledge here, so I'm going to have to defer some of these ones. Can socks be washed?
No. Now, the simple reason for socks, they can't not being washed, is that you can't thread them onto the laundry string. And the whole, when your laundry is then hanging up, we fix the string around the washing line, and your laundry hangs on it. Anything not on the string falls to the floor. Sock mounting ensues. So no socks, I'm afraid. You can only wash things that can be slotted onto the string.
Great, very thorough answer on that one. The morning, evening shower facilities don't come with products, so you'll need to bring a bit of shower gel, shampoo and things like that. The question from Joe on how many people on the ride. So the best part of 1,000 people, but about 900 on the road at any one time, because the way England, Scotland packages and a few of the sponsored daily stages are arranged. And I think that is all I've got on my questions on this one. So I don't know if Andy, any have come to you or Karen.
Yeah, I've got 3 here. Lawrence has asked, excuse me, and this is one I think probably for the team. When do we receive items purchased through the shop, e.g. jerseys, hoodies, as these will need to be taken into consideration when packing?
Good question. I may have to defer to one of the guys on the line. So either Sophie, Hev or Bagsy, anyone able to jump in on that one, or do we need to send that around afterwards?
I think I can answer that, Tubbs. I think the merchandise range is being finalised at the moment, so we'll be out shortly. I'm not exactly sure of the time frame, but I know that's all being put together now. So we will be in plenty of time for you to purchase before the ride.
Okay. Cheers. Paul has said, with so many people on site, is there lots of queuing for everything? I think Karen, you've answered that, but I'll also back up. You know, it's if people that finish early have obviously got no queuing. People finish late have got very little queuing. If you're finishing when everyone's finishing, then there's potential for a little bit, but it's never, in my experience, been very bad queuing. I don't know whether you've got anything to add to that, Tups and Karen.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things. We'd always encourage people to, when they get in, go and get showered nice and quickly, partly from a hygiene perspective. Sitting around in the grubby chamois can catch up with you later in the week, but also it helps the flow through the camp. It varies with everything from type of weather. If it's sunny, everyone sits out having a beer and runs the shower at the same time sometimes. If it's cold and wet, some people spend a bit longer in the shower than we'd ask. So there'll always be moments when there's a little bit of queuing, but we do everything we can to minimize it and ask all the riders to kind of work with us on that as we go through the ride.
Brilliant. And one last one I've got is, I think, Karen, this is probably for you, and I think I know the answer anyway. What about if you're with someone and want to be in a tent next to each other? Is this possible?
Yes. I mean, it's easier if you're both coming into the camp at the same time and you're roughly the same cycling speed. But yes, if you are a couple or just want to be next to each other, that's fine. You just need to tell the people who are on the tent allocation desk. What we can't do is for you to collect like 20 tents and say, right, this is for my whole team. You sort of need to be a little bit flexible and understand what we're trying to do is just get you the next tent that's ready as you come into the camp. So it is feasible to do that, but ideally, if you're coming to get your tents together, that does help. I've got another question on camping as well. Do you sleep in the tent the night before the event starts? Yes, you do. So Friday night is a camping night. Friday night is the registration day. And in the evening, we have a big briefing about what's to expect for the rest of the week. And you're camping that night in Land's End. So that's Friday night, Land's End.
Great, thanks, Karen. We've got a couple more popped in here. Start times each day, and what time is breakfast? So Karen, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Start times each day will vary between 6:30 and 7 on the whole. And we'll let you know what the start time is going to be at the previous night's briefing. We have a start window though. You don't all have to leave at 6:30. We normally have an hour's window. So if the start time is 6:30, you can then go out as late as 7:30. So we would encourage you, if you are a slower rider, to get out early, and if you're a fast rider that's going to cope well with the miles in the time frame, feel free to leave it till later. Breakfast is then normally an hour before the start time. So 6:30 start time will mean a 5:30 or 5 o'clock breakfast. And again, we'll let you know that. So it slightly depends on each day, and you'll let you know what the terrain is going to be like. It can be a little bit weather dependent as well. And occasionally we have started earlier at 6 o'clock, but we will let you know as each day goes. But on the whole, between 6:30 and 7, and breakfast then around about 5 o'clock.
And I think that, that point I said a second ago about trying to work with people, work with all the riders during the event to try and make things run smoothly. We always say, if you're fast, you don't need to be first out in the queue. The food is not going to run out. And if you get an extra kind of 45 minutes tucked into your sleeping bag, you'll come in, there'll be a bit less of a queue for breakfast. There's plenty left, and you can go out on, nice clear roads and get straight on your bike and straight on out there. So it's a case of working out the rhythm of the ride that suits you, but it's designed so that it's done over periods of time rather than getting everyone done at exactly the same time. So we'll be talking about that as we go through the ride. So we've got one of the final ones here. Most important question of the night: is it Yorkshire tea bags?
I don't think I know the answer.
Don't think we've got a tea sponsor.
No.
I think if you're very specific about the nature of your tea bags, a bit like the hot water bottle question, then I would pack a little stash of motivational Yorkshire tea bags just in case. But equally, we're not going to the other side of the moon, so you can always pick some up on the way past some shops on the way if need be. Right, we've got a few more coming in here as well. Will there be hair dryers? Yes, there is a pumper zone with mirrors and hair dryers and stuff like that. The severe weather contingency plans, what happens if there's a storm? So there's a very thorough contingency planning for all manner of different scenarios, ranging from base camp evacuations to storms to route closures to route rediversions and things like that. So there's an enormous amount in the background which is in place if scenarios come up like that. So there are contingency plans, and they're too detailed to go into on a session like this, but it depends on what the scenario is, when it happens. Is it something we can predict in future? What can we put in place to work around it? But ultimately, we are governed by running the event as safely as possible and minimizing as many of those risks of riding on open roads as we can. Weather is a key part of that. And we've got a full wind contingency plan for out on the route and in base camps as well, which would come into play in that scenario. Hopefully it will just be nice brisk tailwinds all the way. First for everything. And one, I suppose, connected with that, how are the roads marshalled? So this is probably maybe one for Andy, talking about the route and how that is kind of signposted in the infrastructure we've got in there.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that it's really clear to say that this is a non-competitive cycling event, and as such, there's no legislation in the UK for any notification to the authorities. However, Threshold is a very responsible and conscientious organisation. Therefore, all the local authorities are made fully aware that this event is taking place. I will have driven the route at least 3 times before we take to the road in September. We have a very, very detailed junction by junction risk assessment, which has been completed and amended each year to reflect any changes. We conduct a dynamic risk assessment 2 weeks out to make sure that any of those changes that may have taken place are logged. There will be a team that are setting up the signage. So signs are put out before a junction, on a junction, and after a junction. So it's an acronym that we've sort of coined, if you like, WTC: warning before the junction, turning on the junction, and confirmation after. And the signs are put out in that way. Those signs, so that gives us another opportunity for those guys to give us any heads up of any changes to the route. We then send a vehicle out before the first riders go. That's a lead vehicle which goes and drives the route before anybody's on the route to check that the signs are still in place from the day before. And that carries a whole load of spare signs just in case anyone's tampered with the signs. And then, of course, the ride goes out. All signage is taken down immediately the last rider goes by. So we pride ourselves on trying to maintain as safe as sort of course as we possibly can. But ultimately, you know, you are riding on the open highway and the responsibility lies with the individual. So you do need to take responsibility for your own actions. And that sort of, if you like, you know, when you're riding a group, if you get to a junction, you need to decide whether it's safe to go across, not just go across blindly because the rider in front of you has gone across. And that seems like an obvious thing to say, but it's really important that we do make sure that we are conscious of all of our responsibilities on the open highway. We've got a very, very high safety record on this event, extremely high. And if you think about the number of kilometers or miles that have been traveled by the number of people that have taken part in this event, then it's outstanding in my opinion.
Thanks, Andy. Hopefully that goes into some of the background, but equally, if people have got any kind of further questions, please, you know, email us, pick up the phone, we can chat you through it.
I do have just a couple more.
Yeah.
Someone's asking, if you're joining the Scotland leg, what time should you arrive at the camp the night before? You basically, any time from 2 o'clock, the camps are open. So if you're joining in Edinburgh, just arrive that day and you will have a briefing that night to bring you up to speed with all things that are going on for you and your Scottish contingent. And
Great.
one
and we
other,
had another, sorry, Kaza, we had another one just to what time to arrive in Land's End. It's 2 o'clock for that one, doesn't it?
2 o'clock, yeah. Especially at Land's End, we cannot open the site before 2, so please don't get there too early, or if you do, just have a wander around Land's End, you know, go and look at the signpost and the scenery and come up at 2 o'clock. I think we've answered this one. Someone's saying, so do we need 9 pairs of cycle socks? I would say yes, unless you want to rinse out your socks and hang them in the drying room.
Great.
One last one for me. What's the toughest, longest climb? I think it's fair to say for those who are concerned about climbing, 2 things. One is that the first 2 days are just relentless in terms of short, sharp climbs. Devon and Cornwall are definitely not flat, but the toughest and the longest climbs are probably once we get into Scotland. The longest climb, I'm guessing, is the climb up to Glen Shee, which is a very long, steady drag. Possibly Shapfell is equally as long, but a much steadier gradient. But the toughest climb is probably the start of day 8, when we, after 10 miles, we go up what's called the Lecht, which is probably our steepest climb, and it comes quite early on in the day. So those are the 2. And it says tips on hill climbing. My top tip is to just go out and ride as many climbs as you can. However, having said that, I will always caveat that by saying that some of the world's best hill climbers in the Tour de France, King of the Mountains winners, came from Holland, which is not renowned for its hill climbing or mountainous terrain. So the point I'm trying to make there is that ride at intensity. When you're training, ride at a certain intensity and you'll get over the climbs, no problem at all.
Great. Thanks, guys. I think we're running down on time. There's a few more popping in, but we'll have to wrap it up in a second. There's one just around food, around breakfast. What sort of food do we get for breakfast?
Real mixture. You can have porridge, croissants, and that sort of thing, or you can have more of full English, bacon, sausage, egg. All special diets are also taken care of.
Great. So that's, yeah, that covers off another one around vegan and vegetarian. So we do have a range of those, range of options for those as well. And I think if you've got any specifics as well, conscious the kind of growth of veganism and vegetarian, we're definitely interested in how we provide a really good service for people who don't eat meat. So any advice or guidance you've got, you know, we'll always try and take account of that and bring it into our menus and things like that. So always open for recommendations and suggestions. And a final one here, just about getting back from John O'Groats, how best to take our bikes back. So on the on all the information. Of course, it should outline different options where we can support with shuttles away from John O'Groats down to a place like Inverness. We've also got options to support with bike transport, so you can leave your bike at John O'Groats. We get that transported to different hubs around the UK, and I think that is linked. It will be on the rider comms that get sent out to you on the event information platform as well. So hopefully lots of questions coming out there in the second half, which is great, across a whole range of topics. So hopefully for those of you dialed in, more information are there around the kind of bike, the kind of kit, the kind of equipment that's going to set you up as well as possible. But as we've always say, this is not the only forum to ask these questions. So please do give us a call in the office. It's exciting to actually be back in an office now. So yeah, give us a call. Happy to talk through anything, no matter how big or small, or drop us a line. We want to get you as well prepared and relaxed for when we actually get to meet you in person down in Land's End. Looking forward to it. So yeah, thanks to the guys in the background ahead, Sophie and Sophie have been helping out with all the tech, and also Lee, Karen, Andy. Always great to have you dispensing your wisdom for the benefit of everyone. And thanks finally to everyone who's dialed in. Great to see lots of people on here taking the preparation seriously, and best of luck with your training. All the best. Chat soon. Bye.